Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Indie Authors. I'm your host, Brittani Starr, and today we welcome Karis Meier. Karis and her husband have 4 children and reside in Northern Virginia. She holds a BA in Christian education and a master's in counseling. She is a wife, mother, author, counselor, and speaker. Karis has struggled with chronic illness for many years and is passionate about sharing how God leads her through this journey. Her heart is to walk alongside others in their suffering and seek God's comfort and hope in the process. When Karis is not writing, you can find her enjoying the sun, taking walks, playing with her kids, watching soccer, and reading. Her book title is Suffering, Reading Strength to Endure, Purpose in Pain, and Hope for Tomorrow. We live in a world where suffering is inevitable. Can our suffering be redeemed? It depends on how we respond and what we do with our pain. Through faith and surrender, we learn that God can do miracles in a moment and sustain us in our struggles when we turn to him. We can learn how to suffer well and live well no matter what life brings. So please welcome to the show, Karis Meier.
Conversations with Indie Authors.
You have a lot of topics that you want to that you would love to explore. And I want you to really give a background because your book is called Suffering Redeemed, Finding Strength to
Mhm.
Endure, Purpose in Pain, and Hope for Tomorrow. And so can you take us back to the beginning? Where did you come up with this idea? Why did you want to write this book?
Sure. Yeah, so I never imagined writing a book. It wasn't really on my agenda of things to do. So when I was 20, let's see, I was 25, I traveled over to Pakistan to visit my sister who was they were living over there. She had her first baby, so I wanted to be there with her. And a few months later, when I came back, I noticed like I was just having a lot of weird symptoms. And several months later, I was actually living in Alaska at the time because my husband's in the military. So anyways, I found out that I had a few different kind of parasites that are very rare and very hard to treat and can, get into your organs and like all sorts of just really bad stuff. So it's kind of started me on this journey, which I never expected, of having a lot of different health problems. And so I kept thinking, well, eventually I'll get out of this and be able to go on with my life. But it was like, I would say like 8 years in of just going to doctor after doctor and having one thing. So I had a lot of different organ problems, heart and kidney and pancreas, and just one thing after the other. I was laying in bed one night and I really felt like God was telling me to write a book, to start, well, not to write a book, but basically just start writing, start processing what I was going through. And at the time I was going through I would say a very low, very desperate, despairing time. I had just had a new diagnosis of Lyme disease. And so I didn't feel like I had anything to write about, but I did start, and it ended up being such a blessing for me, and very therapeutic, I would say. Also, just processing a lot of what I was going through, a lot of the questions I was having, a lot of, just anyone who finds himself, I think, on a road where they don't expect to be. There's just a lot of questions that come to mind, and so for me, it was a lot of um, just soul searching. And also, God had always been a foundation for me, of going back to finding hope. And so this was like, what was this, about 6 years ago now. So I started a Facebook group and then a blog, just kind of reaching out to other people who were suffering. I know for me, it was mostly physical, but everyone goes through their own things in this life, of course. And so it really just opened up an avenue for me to be reaching out and sharing through my writing. And at the beginning of 2022, I was feeling called, inspired to put a lot of what I'd written into a book. And so that's kind of where the book came from. A lot of it had been written not intending to share it with others, which was it was hard. It was hard to kind of put myself out there, not really, because in the moment, I was very raw, very matter of fact, this is how it is. But I've been told that's what has been such a blessing for people who have read it, who are going through something hard, is that it's authentic. And I'm still walking this journey. I'm still struggling every day with my health, but I've also found just so much joy and purpose, and just a lot of strength in having to face something that feels like too much many days. So does that answer your question?
Can you talk to us? What is because you talk about the purpose of suffering. Can you talk to us about that
Mhm.
a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think it's hard, because I think there's some things that we suffer through, like example, having a baby, right? That's a lot of suffering. And then you get the baby and it's like, wow, that's very obvious, like why I had to suffer to get the baby. And it's such a blessing. And there's a new child in the world. And so I think some of our pain is immediately, we see the result, we see the why, we understand. And there's some suffering like that, but then there's some, like for me, who with a chronic illness, that it didn't seem for a long time for me like what good could come out of this. And yet I think, it's a lot of it is how we respond to suffering. I don't think suffering in itself is always fruitful or good or beneficial or redemptive, because if we are responding in a way that doesn't open up to allow fruit to grow in our lives, or for us to mature, or for us to look outside of ourselves, it can become all consuming. And I know a lot of people who commit suicide or can't handle it, and so I'm not like saying like, oh, suffering's great, it's always good. But I think, and I've seen in my own life, where when I am able to and for me, a lot of my journey has been um, walking with God through this, and finding hope in the Bible and through verses, and so seeing more things from the eternal perspective, rather than like only the temporal, like what's happening right here and now. Because if I only focused on my body and how I'm feeling and how this is impacting my life, I think I wouldn't see the fruit. So some of the things I think that I've seen is how it really, for me at least, I've really seen it shift just what my perspective is. What am I focusing on? Is it the everything that I can see and touch and feel, or is it more eternal things? Is it longer? Is it more? There's a maturity, I think, that comes when you're able to look beyond what is happening right in front of us, and so that's one thing, is just the eternal perspective, and being able to look um, past just the immediate gratification of, I think, sometimes what we want in this life. Another thing is just really a lot of compassion. Um, I so I have a master's in counseling, and I already had always felt very drawn to people who were struggling, who were suffering, who were in pain. But going through this myself and being in places where I felt so desperate, some days I didn't feel like I wanted to live anymore, and being so depressed and so anxious about, laying in hospital beds and feeling so anxious about this and that and all these tests and everything. It really has just grown in me such a compassion for other people who are going through hard things. Um, and I think when I was able to finally look past my own pain and look to others, it's also just been so gratifying and satisfying to be able to reach others in that vulnerable place where I think sometimes when you're going through something, if somebody else has gone through it or who understands, it's so much more um you can just connect, right, at a deeper level rather than someone who's like, oh, I've never been there, but I'm sorry, that's really hard. So I think there's just a connection and a reaching out that can happen when you have gone through something difficult. Um, and then also, I would say something else is, this may sound strange, but just gratitude and learning how to find um just the expression and of thankfulness and finding gratitude in things that maybe you don't or maybe take for granted. I think when we're going through something that's hard, it's easy to focus on just trying to get out of that hard thing so much that you lose sight of other things. And I remember when I got COVID, I lost my sense of smell for a while. And when I got it back, I was just like, this is amazing to smell things. Like I just remember smelling like coffee or like my baby's like hair and the shampoo and the hair. And I was just like, it was just some of those things that we can take for granted. And I think when we lose things or we I don't know, sometimes when things are taken away from us or we're not walking in a place where maybe we necessarily want to be, there is such a there can be such joy that we find in the small things. If again, it comes back to how are we going to respond to this? Are we going to respond to focusing only on the hard, the negative, or are we going to look to the things that we do have to be grateful for? So that's just something that I have really been able to focus on and hopefully grow in through the years. Yeah, that's, I guess I'll stop there for now.
So you are chronically going through things. Are you still in the hospital currently? Like, I mean, not right this minute, but
Mhm.
currently, as in consistently throughout, are you going to continue because you have chronic illnesses?
Well, it kind of so currently so it's been like about a year, I think, since I've been in the hospital, about a year, which is great. Um I am being treated. I mean, so the Lyme disease is something there's just ongoing, and it kind of has flare ups. I have a lot of digestive issues, kind of ulcerative colitis and other things that cause flare ups, and so it's just a lot of the things that I deal with on a day to day basis are mostly manageable, but they make it a lot more difficult, to live life. And I mean, by the grace of God, I have four children, so ages 3 to 13. So it's sometimes. So in the beginning of this whole thing, the doctors told me that I would never be able to have kids because I have a tumor in my pituitary gland. But we have four miracles, and some days I think, God, why did you give me these four very energetic children? But at the same time, they are such a joy and a blessing to me. Every day I see them, I just think what a miracle each of them is. And so yeah, it's not day by day. I would say it's just oh yeah, it's just a getting through the day for me. A lot of times is like, okay, I am just going to focus on what I can do to get through today and not try to worry about tomorrow or the next week or the next year. Um, so that's kind of how I live my life.
I totally understand. I actually have severe chronic pain that sometimes I can't walk. And so
Mm,
I understand where you're coming from, and like in the feeling of like, well, what's the point of being alive if this is
mm,
what it is? Like, I get that. I also have children. I am also not a Christian, and I don't believe in God, but my audience knows this. So,
mhm,
um, but yeah, so I look at things like I am really grateful that I get to watch my children. I have a 1-year-old and I have a 16-year-old. Well, I have 11-year-old as well. And so they're
oh,
all over the place. But I get to she's walking now, and she's like, well, she doesn't walk. She just started running, how they do.
yeah, yeah.
I barely know how to walk, but I'm gonna run everywhere. Bash my head on everything. Ah! But
Oh.
and so it's precious. Every moment with my family is
Mm,
absolutely precious to me. I'm really grateful that I have an opportunity to support independent authors, and believe freedom is one of my top things. So even if I don't
mhm,
agree with it, I bring it on here because I support any author. If it's not going to be detrimental to people. I have some,
mhm.
but I bring it on here.
Yeah.
But I totally understand exactly what you're talking about. But I was going to ask you, like, what would you say to someone that isn't religious or doesn't believe in God? Because I know I go through the same things. Some
Mhm,
days I'm walking around and I think I'm okay, and then my leg just won't move, and so I'm stuck.
mm,
And so, I mean, I get
mhm.
that, and I'm trying to I'm like filming movies, like trying to like act like I'm not disabled, and so okay, I got to feel myself walk up this really fast. I mean, but I think it's hysterical, and I laugh about it, and I'm like, I don't know how.
Yeah.
None of us know how long that we're going to be here,
Mhm,
and so it's interesting. But I'm like, well, every minute I have, I want to spend with my family, and I want to do important things, and some things are more important. So, but what would you say to someone that isn't a Christian?
mhm. Yeah, so it's interesting. I've been reading a lot of like biographies or autobiographies of people who went through the concentration camps of World War II and um all of that during the Holocaust. And it it has been so interesting to see how having a purpose, having a hope in having a purpose in life really was what made a difference in people who survived and didn't. They would have the same horrific circumstances, and those who just gave up, who said, I don't, there's no reason for me to live, basically they just died because so much of our physical body is going to respond to our mind and to our feelings and what we are telling ourselves, right? So I think something that is just so important is to find what your purpose is. I mean, big or small, it could be a small thing, but we all have a purpose on this life in this life, and we all impact each other. Just the littlest things, our neighbors, that we say hello to, or the people at the grocery store. I just think so much how like little smiles can make such a difference. And so I would just say, like, don't lose your purpose, and if you don't have one, find one, because there's so much to do. And um, I think, something one of my mottos is like, make the most out of every opportunity. Be fully present where you are. Because we all wish, the grass is always greener on the other side, and we could all wish we were somewhere else doing something else. But the reality is we are who we are, and we've been blessed with a life, and it's our responsibility, yours, mine, whoever's listening, to choose how to use that. And really every minute is a choice, right? We always have a choice to make. We every morning. I love the idea of like new mornings, because it's like, you know what? We got to start over, a new day. So forget tomorrow. If you failed, you know, 5,000 times, it's okay. Start again. It's okay. Just that idea of like grace, give yourself grace. And there's always hope to move forward. And there's people who want to be there for you. There's people who want to be there with you. Don't do it alone. I did that for many years, and it doesn't work very well. So,
Um, pardon me. Also, oh goodness. I coughed now. I can't remember what I was going to say.
Oh,
Oh,
mommy brain, yeah.
right. I know exactly. Like, don't even ask me. But um, that's sometimes you're going to give up. Sometimes you're going to wake up and be like, no, I can't do this. And that's
Mhm.
okay too.
Yep.
And
Oh,
then,
yeah. I've been there many mornings. Yeah, I'm not saying that. There's gonna be mornings where you say that, but yeah.
but
Yep.
overall, if as long as you keep getting back up, that's exactly what resilience is you continue getting back up.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, what are the unexpected gifts in our pain?
Mm. So I think that this also ties to some of the purposes. I think one of the things is just learning. Well, I've really grown close to a few people. I call them my battle buddies, I guess, kind of like just when you go through something hard, unique, maybe it could be unique or not, but um, there is a real opportunity to grow close for someone and close with someone or someone's. As I shared earlier, I for the first probably, I don't know, 5 to 7 years of this journey with my health, I really kept most of it inside because I didn't want to be a burden to other people. I felt like if I shared what I was going through, it would come across as complaining, or people would feel like turned away or turned off, or they would feel like they would have to, just that I would be putting a burden on them they didn't want. Um, but over the years, I've learned that it's a gift to be able to share each other's pains and burdens and to walk with each other. And I have a few very close friends, people who I have been walking with, and it has been such a blessing. I think through hardship, I mean, this is no, not just like with suffering, but any hardship. I mean, my husband's in the army, so like he talks about this too. Like when they're over at in war together, they grow so close because they're in something that's really hard, right? So when you're walking with someone in something that's really really hard, you grow closer to them just naturally. It just happens because that's how we're made. So I think there's a there's a unique opportunity, I would say, to grow with others through that. um, I would say something else is just there's wisdom and maturity that can come through suffering. And I think again, it it is something that is not always born through going through something difficult, but it can. And I think some of the most wise and just full people that I know are people who have walked really hard roads. And it's because they have walked those roads that they have so much wisdom and so much maturity and so much to give other people. We don't grow through easy things all the time, at least. I would say it's mostly through walking through something hard that helps us to grow and to mature. Um, and to learn, the hard things like endurance and growing our character and finding hope and having to be steadfast in something that we feel like giving up in. So I think there's a lot of just character qualities that probably won't come other places. And I know, different people have different faiths, which is great. For me personally, like I said, I am a Christian, and for me, it really did grow my relationship with God, and my conviction and my faith really grew through this. And so for whoever, whatever, I'm not saying like everyone has to be like me. I'm just saying like suffering can help someone to grow deeper in their faith or in their walk, whatever that looks like, in their journey of what they, hope in or expect or live
Mhm.
for. It can be a um something that really helps us dig deeper. And so,
I
yeah,
agree
I
with
would say
that.
those are some of the things.
Can you talk about the importance of whole person care?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's so important. We, I think it's so easy to neglect certain parts of us, and maybe some people are more prone to one or the other. But I think of, I know there's different ways that you can break down an individual, but I think of it kind of as like the body, the soul, and the spirit. Where the body obviously is our more of our physical being. Um, the soul is more of like our emotions and how we relate to others, um, and then the spirit is more how we relate to the universe, to God, to whoever. And so just especially when you are going through something hard, when you are enduring, when you are under a lot of stress, it is so important to take care of yourself, to take care of all these different areas, to invest time in. So first of all, with your body, to getting the rest it needs, to be um, eating the foods that are good for you, to be getting exercise. And I think sometimes, at least for me, because a lot of mine was physical, I felt like I needed to live up to what a healthy person was doing, and that thing of comparison is just no good. Um, but just taking your own body and saying, this is what I need to live a healthy life, and so I'm going to do that. And my diet is very different, and so it's always hard, like going out and being with other people, because I just have to eat differently than most people. And so again, like, just it might look different, but we each have to do what is best for our body, and really take care of our bodies, because it's the only one we have. So um and then, yeah, I think the soul, the dealing with emotions, I it can be such a murky, hard thing to navigate. And I think I used to think of like all the bad emotions, like anger and jealousy and all the, like, as like, oh, I shouldn't talk about those. I shouldn't, I shouldn't be having those emotions. And even just like grief that I was going through something that for many years that I didn't want to. And it was actually my sister who mentioned to me, she's like, Karis, you should lament, like, you should be grieving what you have lost to this illness. And it sounded so strange to me. I'm like, that's weird. I don't, but I did, and it was amazing what came out. I was like, wow, I really have a lot of sorrow. Like, I really have a lot that I didn't even know was inside of me until I started processing it. And so just things like that either you can do it through journaling or talking with someone who will listen to you and ask questions. Um, and then again, just um, attending to our spirit and how we connect, whether it to be with God, or meditation, or how you get grounded. That is just, it's so important. And so taking time, it takes time, right? It takes, all of these things take time. And in a culture where busyness is like glorified, it's hard to really take care of yourself. But how are we going to be effective if we are not taking care of ourselves? So
That's
that's
absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Can you talk to us? What project is next for you?
hmm So I am not completely sure. I am, so for me, it's interesting. My writing kind of comes in just times of inspiration. I don't just like sit down and write. It's usually something will trigger it, and then I will just write. So I have a few different books that I say books. I kind of keep like a journal on the computer, and I continue to write blogs periodically. So I'm not sure. It's kind of more of a, I'm yeah, I'm still figuring out what it's gonna be, but I really do enjoy writing, and I feel like it's a blessing to me, and I have found that it's a blessing to others. So I'll just continue to do that for now.
Well, if anyone resonated with this, like, where can they find you online? What do you offer? Do you still have that Facebook group?
Yeah, so there's a Facebook group called Suffering Well, and it's private, but you can just request to join it. And um, I am also on Facebook and Instagram. And then my website is karismeier.com. And you can find my blog on there. And then my book is also on Amazon.
Wonderful, wonderful. It was really nice to meet you. Honestly, we have a lot in common,
Yeah,
and
I
you have a
know.
great perspective. I love it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really great.
The Zarlequan Indieverse.